Hi, it's Dave here from Melbourne SEO Services and joined with Steve Ovens, our lead SEO here, and we're actually going to take you through a little bit more understanding about the audit that you've got, just so you kind of understand the thought process that goes behind it. So maybe I'll pass to you, Steve. Maybe if you can kind of take us through, because you architected this audit, and I'm interested to know how it breaks down.
Sure. Well, as you know, essentially Google looks at your site in a lot of different layers, and we've broken down the audit to match that. So we start off, we think of it as a pyramid, and we start off at the base of the pyramid looking at the structure of your site. So really what that's about is making sure that your site is technically set up correctly. It's amazing sometimes when we look at a site and the site can be fantastic in every other aspect, and somebody might have switched off a flag that says to Google, don't index this site. So you can have this great site and you're telling Google, whatever you do, don't index it, don't show anybody me in the search results. So that's a simple example of something that you can do at the site structure level. There's a whole lot of other things that go into that, making sure that your site can be read and crawled by Google, and that it's generally well put together.
So the types of things like different, the URLs,
URL structure,
categories.
that's right,
Yeah.
how your site's been laid out and how the pages link together.
Yeah.
Very important things that we look at there.
We jump into webmaster tools as well for this
That's right.
area to find out.
Yeah, making sure that the site is indexed by Google, that we've got, say, a sitemap's been created so that we've told Google what are the important pages that we want to have indexed.
Yeah.
And that there aren't any bad errors that Google's telling us about, saying, hey, you need to look at this problem on your site. So we go and have a look at all those things. So that's our site structure. Oh, the other thing that's probably worth mentioning there is that we make sure that the platform that you're using is returning the correct code back to Google when Google goes and looks at the page.
Yeah.
So what that means in sort of non-techo speak is that when we say to your website, I want to look at the home page, it not only comes back with the page, but it actually comes back with a code as well, and it says, yep, this page is okay.
Yeah.
And some other codes that it might give back is it might say, oh, this page has moved, or this page is not found. There's some pretty standard ones. So we just make sure that your site is giving back the right codes for the right sort of pages.
Yeah.
So that's our site structure. And that's the foundation that we build all this upon. Now, of course, your site is made up of individual pages. So that the next level that we look at is we actually look at the on-page factors. And this is probably the area that most people are familiar with on their sites. It's where you spend most of your time as the site owner. And then what we're looking at are things like the page titles, but that you're using the sort of the keywords that your site is about sensibly on the page, not overdoing it,
Yeah.
but also that you are actually mentioning it, so that if you've got a page that's let's say you've got a page about anti-wrinkle treatments, say. We'd kind of like to have anti-wrinkle treatment in the page title. Now, some site platforms will set it up so all the pages by default have just got the brand. So
Yeah.
it might be just, XYZ skin clinic. And that obviously doesn't help you to rank for those keywords that you might be trying to get visitors for. So we go through and make sure that you've got your on-page factors correct. And that includes also looking to make sure that you're not duplicating your page titles, because one of the things that Google doesn't like is if you've got duplicate content across your site, and it uses page titles as a way to detect that.
A lot of these things, some people might have heard, a few of these different terms that you're throwing out, and they also relate to some of the different updates that we've had. I mean, a lot of this
Yep.
here, this foundational, as you've sort of marked out here, is to do with Panda and factors that are happening on site.
Correct. Yeah.
So why is that such an important part to get right? Like how does, if you don't have this right, the other things kind of don't work?
Well, that's right, and in fact, so Panda, it's probably worth talking about that now. Panda is, as you say, that's a filter that Google has put in place to make sure that when they land somebody on a page, that it is actually a page that delivers a good user experience. So that's, and Google can measure that in a couple of different ways. First, they can look at the amount of content on the page and look at how much of that is text and how much of that is, say, ads, for example. So if you've got a page I'll get really brave here and I'll try and actually write on the whiteboard. Here we go. If I've got a page and it's got ads here and here, and then it's maybe got an ad here, and then I've got some text. When a user lands on that page, they might only see that much of it in their browser. And Google looks at that and says, well, most of that's rubbish and not related and not good quality content. That's not a good user experience. So Panda is a filter that Google applies to try and stop sites like this being returned in the search results. So the things that we look at, in addition to sort of classic SEO factors, are the things that Panda is looking for, which is that site speed, performance, those sorts of things.
Which is really interesting, because when you go through your audit findings and you have a look, sometimes you'll see a listing of different things that you need to fix on your actual website. And you might be wondering, I've got these big laundry list of things that need to be done. We've got the checklist to understand what Google's actually looking for, and we want to bring your website into line with Google's guidelines, giving it or following their best practice. And then what that does is that then enables the other components of SEO to actually start working, because it's very possible that your website's getting held back because you're not giving the best user experience, and ultimately that's what Google wants to deliver.
That's right. Yeah, so having these things wrong, exactly as you said, the stuff above that won't help you, or certainly won't help you as much if these things aren't working for you. So yeah, we very much take that, put the firm foundation in place and build upon that. So we want to get those things right first. But the next key area of SEO, of course, and most people who've been in SEO for a long time know this, it's all about links.
Yeah.
I've got to get links to my site. And in fact, you've got to get the right sort of links to your site. It's not so much about getting thousands of links, it's about getting the right sort of links, which are relevant links from quality websites. So what we look at there is we look at the existing links that you've got. We want to make sure that you've got a good link profile, that you haven't got any sort of really dodgy links that are in there. And in addition, again, looking at Webmaster Tools, we'll look at that and say, is Google calling out any of your links? Have you had any penalties applied, for example, for previous linking practices? So we look at the links that you've got, and we'll also look at some links that your competitors might have, and just sort of understand where are other sites getting links in the market that you're in. So we look at the links, and again, Google has a filter for your link profile, which is the Penguin filter, and that's all looking at. It's looking at how does your link profile stack up compared to what would be considered natural or normal. So it's just making sure that you haven't basically spammed a whole bunch of other sites to get links back to your site. So that's what Penguin is looking at, and that's what we look at in that area of the audit. And links are actually tied in with social as well. So the sort of the icing on the cake, if you like, for your SEO is, what does your social link profile look like? What does your social links say about you? So, for example, if I put a story on my website and then a lot of people like it on Facebook or tweet about it on Twitter, or in the Google, what Google wants you to do is that they plus it on Google. That actually is a signal that Google can see, and if you subsequently then got a lot of links to that page, it would make sense. Yeah, if a lot of people are talking about it and then people start linking to it, that's kind of what it looks like when a piece of content goes viral on the web.
Yeah.
So your social links are important, and the first thing that we look at is just, have you enabled social sharing of your content? So we just make sure that you've actually you're able to like the pages, that you've got the Facebook buttons and the tweet buttons and Pinterest and things that are relevant in your market. And then we'll just look at your social links as well.
I think we'll start to see this starting to rise in importance as well. It's something that we've talked about. Google's definitely really wanting to integrate this into their algorithm and make it an important factor. And you might even get some recommendations in your audit about setting up authorship, which is again tied into this social aspect, because Google wants to almost get rid of this anonymous web where a lot of people were creating very low quality content with the sole purpose of trying to manipulate the search engine rankings, and make it a bit more transparent and assign ownership and authorship. And so when someone links to you, if they've got a good profile or a presence that Google recognizes, obviously a link from them is going to be considered more important. So all of these factors that we sort of group together, you can then sort of start to apply on your website to make sure that you're giving yourself the best possible chance of ranking in the eyes of Google.
Yep, that authorship one that's a really good point and very important nowadays. So we look at that as well. Just exactly. We want to make sure that you've got authorship set up and that you are tagging your content, because Google has actually, it's one of the very few things Google has explicitly said is that I can't remember the exact wording he used, but it was basically the penalty for being anonymous is that you'll be irrelevant. In other words, you won't show up in Google. So very important. Now, of course, having looked at about 193 things on our checklist now.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't talk about penalties. Obviously, if you've got a penalty, then in looking at this, we'll see that there's a penalty. This is explicitly by Google that they penalised you.
In fact, I mean, that's kind of where we start. One of the first things that we'll do is look at your analytics and see your your traffic graph coming through to the site, and we identify, with our tools, we can kind of line up when different updates happen to see if you've been hit with a specific update. If you have, that gives us indications on where to channel in or narrow in and really dive deep in on some of these areas. That said though, for your audit, we still go through, every audit process is the same. It's very detailed, very system orientated with this checklist that we're following. And that kind of leads to the result.
So out of this quite detailed process that we go through, you then end up with a prioritised action plan. So, we're a very results-oriented company, and, we want to make sure that you don't just get, here's 73 things that you need to fix. And one of them is fix the copyright date on the bottom of your pages, and the other one is turn off the flag that's telling Google to stop indexing your site, and you don't know which one to do first. We want to make sure that we go, here's the critical stuff, you've got to fix this stuff, this is your quick wins, get this stuff done quickly, here's the important stuff, and then here's the stuff that, look, this is nice to do. And then there'll be some stuff, like, for example, link building, where it's an ongoing process, and we'll call that out as well and say, look, this is the sort of stuff that you need to be doing on an ongoing basis to continually improve your SEO.
Okay, so the next step is let's jump in and have a look at your audit and see how your website's faring in the eyes of Google. So thanks for your time, Steve, and let's actually pass over to the next team member that'll walk you through your audit. Catch you soon.
Cheers.